Today, I want to shed light on the plight of the Kukis. It is essential for us to understand the challenges they face and the hardship they endure. By bringing their struggles into the open, we can foster greater awareness and support for their cause. The Kukis, like many other communities, are navigating a complex landscape of difficulties that deserves our attention and empathy. The world must finally confront the truth about the Kuki people and the immense suffering they endure. Despite their pivotal role in India's freedom struggle during both world wars, they continue to face relentless persecution by their neighbors. The heart of their suffering lies in the grave injustice of being denied a homeland within their ancestral lands. Stripped of these fundamental rights, they have been marginalized by communities that contributed far less to India's liberation. This historical betrayal has left them stateless, vulnerable, and voiceless, their sacrifices erased from memory. Without any means to uplift themselves, the Kukis' cries for justice are silenced, their suffering ignored. When they fall victims to brutality, their enemies exploit their powerlessness, distorting the truth to cast themselves as the oppressed. With no media or platform to expose their torment, the world is deceived, seeing their oppressors as victims. How can the Kukis' voices be heard when they are systematically suppressed by a majority community that dominates in every aspect? A fact-finding mission must be deployed, staying among the Kuki people to witness their suffering firsthand and to uncover how far the lies of their oppressors have spread. The truth must come to light. This injustice began with the British, whose action carved up Kuki ancestral lands when they granted independence to India and its neighboring countries. These arbitrary borders turned the Kukis into minorities in their own homeland, where they are now unjustly branded as illegal immigrants on the very soil their ancestors inhabited for centuries. Britain must acknowledge its responsibility for the suffering of the Kuki people, a torment that endures as the Indian government turns a blind eye. Unable to defend themselves against a barrage of bullets, bombs, drones, rockets, and mortar shells with nothing but their bare hands, the Kukis have been forced into armed resistance. Most of their weaponry is rudimentary, such as single-barrel guns, an indication of their dire necessity rather than choice. They are compelled to fight for their survival against neighbors who openly call for their destruction. Their defensive efforts are further undermined by their oppressors, who, as the majority, wield control over the government. It is painfully clear that the majority holding sway over the state apparatus will always be seen as justified, with the Indian central government relying exclusively on their skewed reports. The plight of the minority Kukis become all too evident when the government itself is dominated by their adversaries, leaving them in a powerless and vulnerable position. The British must reopen the historical records of the Kuki community, confront the injustice they perpetrated, and address the unresolved issue that continue to plague the Kukis. Why were their lands divided among nations? Was it merely because they resisted British occupation? Even if we set that aside, Britain, as a so-called civilized power, should not have imposed a punishment that condemned the Kukis to a legacy of eternal suffering. It is time for Britain to face the consequence of its action and for justice to be served. The atrocities committed against the Kukis, the brutal slaughter of civilians, the desecration of their bodies, and the horrific abuse of their women must not be ignored. The cruelty inflicted upon Kuki women is so unimaginable that even the mothers and sisters of their oppressors would recoil in horror. Without immediate intervention by the United Nations, the world's foremost authority on human rights, it is clear that the ethnic cleansing of the Kukis will persist. The Indian government, driven by political interests and the overwhelming number of the oppressor community, has chosen to look the other way, prioritizing votes and power over justice. The Kukis can no longer endure this persecution, and the world must not stand idly by. Silence is complicity in their continued suffering. The time for action is now.